Welcome to today's episode of the Deep Dive Credit Podcast, presented by Elite Credit Solutions. We are your trusted partner in affordable credit repair, proudly based in Tampa, Florida, and dedicated to serving clients across the entire United States. Join us as we explore the intricacies of credit management, share expert insights, and empower you with the knowledge you need to achieve your financial goals. Get ready for an enlightening journey into the world of credit. Let's dive in.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. We get this question a lot, especially from our international listeners. And today, we're going to tackle it. How to open a U.S. bank account as a non-U.S. citizen.
Yeah.
We got some great sources to guide us today.
Okay.
Articles from Experian and Bankrate,
Right.
plus a guide from Bias Money.
Sounds good.
So if you're thinking about taking the plunge, get ready for some insider tips.
Okay.
Maybe even a few surprises.
All right. Looking forward to
It
it.
can definitely feel like you're navigating a maze.
Right?
It can?
Yeah.
With all the paperwork and regulations.
Absolutely. But it's definitely doable.
Yeah.
And the benefits can be huge.
Totally.
Financially and practically, so.
Well, let's jump right in.
Okay.
I think a good place to start is with identification.
Sure.
What are the absolute essentials you need to have on hand?
Well, your passport is the first thing.
Okay.
Pretty much a universal requirement.
Got it.
And then the ITNN,
Yeah.
which is crucial for both banking and tax purposes in the U.S. Even if a bank doesn't strictly require it, having an ITN
Yeah.
can open up more options and make the whole process smoother.
So it sounds like the ITN is a real game changer,
Definitely.
even beyond just opening a bank account.
Oh, for sure.
What about proof of address?
Yeah.
What kind of documents do you need for that?
Think standard utility bills, lease agreements, or bank statements.
Got it.
Anything with your name and a U.S. address
Yeah.
that shows you're living here officially.
So passport, ITIN, proof of address.
Yeah.
Check, check.
Exactly.
But what about that initial deposit?
Right.
How much are we talking about? Does it
Uh,
vary from bank to bank?
yeah, you're right. You can't just walk in empty-handed.
Right.
Most banks will have a minimum deposit requirement,
Okay.
usually between $25 and $100.
Got it.
But here's the thing.
Okay.
Some banks and credit unions don't require any minimum deposit at all,
Oh, wow.
which is great news if you're on a tight budget.
That is good to know. So there's some flexibility there.
Definitely.
Let's talk about different residency statuses.
Okay.
Does being a permanent resident change things
It does, yeah.
in terms of what documents you need?
Definitely. Permanent residents have a few more options.
Oh.
They can use their green card,
Right.
an employment authorization card,
Right.
or even a matricula consular
Okay.
if they're Mexican citizens.
Interesting.
Yeah,
So permanent residents have a bit more flexibility.
they do.
But what about those who aren't permanent residents yet?
Right.
Is opening a U.S. bank account even possible for them?
It can be trickier, it's true,
Yeah.
but not impossible.
Okay.
Some banks are more lenient
All right.
and accept foreign passports, consular IDs, or even U.S. employment authorization cards.
Got it.
And then you have initiatives like the Bank On Network,
Right.
which encourages its member banks to be more flexible with IDs,
Okay.
including things like municipal IDs.
Interesting.
So even if the traditional route seems blocked, there are often alternative paths to explore.
That's really helpful.
Yeah.
It seems like there are more options out there
There are,
than you might think at first glance.
for sure.
Speaking of options, Bonbos S Money's wallet app
Right.
sounds like a complete game changer.
It is.
No SSN or ITN needed.
Yeah, they're really breaking down barriers
Wow.
by allowing you to open an account with just a foreign government ID.
That's amazing.
It's a fantastic option,
Yeah.
especially if you're just starting out
Mhm.
and don't have those other documents yet.
So we've covered traditional banks,
Yep, yeah.
credit unions,
Uh-huh.
and now this innovative app.
Right.
What about prepaid debit cards?
Yeah.
Are those a viable option for non-citizens?
They can be a good temporary solution,
Okay.
especially while you're getting settled or waiting for other documents to process.
Right.
But it's important to be aware
Yeah.
that they often come with fees and limitations.
Got it.
So they might not be the best long-term solution.
That makes sense. It's all about finding the right fit for your individual needs and circumstances.
It is.
But let's shift gears for a moment
Okay.
and talk about the why.
Sure.
Why go through all this effort to open a U.S. bank account?
Right.
What are the real advantages,
Yeah.
especially for someone who isn't a U.S. citizen?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And it's one I think a lot of people overlook.
Mhm.
First off,
Yeah.
you're going to save a ton of money.
Really?
Think about all those check cashing fees you can avoid.
Oh, okay.
those can really add up.
Right.
Especially if you're dealing with regular income or payments. Having a bank account can save you hundreds, even thousands of dollars each year.
Wow, I hadn't really thought about it that way.
It's true.
That's a significant chunk of change.
It really is. And then there's the peace of mind of having your money protected by the FDIC.
Right.
You get up to $250,000 in insurance.
Wow.
Which is a huge benefit.
Yeah.
That you wouldn't get by keeping your money at home or using alternative services.
Yeah. So you're talking about security.
Absolutely.
Both financial and in terms of peace of mind.
Definitely.
But what about the day-to-day stuff?
Sure.
Does having a U.S. bank account make things easier in other aspects of life?
Absolutely.
Like how?
Think about things like filing taxes.
Okay.
Setting up direct deposit for your paycheck, or even just shopping online.
Right.
It can all be much smoother and more convenient with a U.S. bank account.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Plus, it can help you start building credit in the U.S.,
Okay.
which can be a huge asset
Right.
if you're planning on staying here long term.
So it's not just about having a place to store your money.
Yep.
It's about accessing a whole system
It is.
that can make your life easier and open up new opportunities.
For sure.
Now, I'm curious of the business side of things.
Okay.
What about those who aren't just looking for a personal account,
Yeah.
but want to set up a corporate account for their business as a non-resident?
That's where things can get a bit more complex, especially if you don't have a physical presence in the U.S.
Right.
But it's definitely not impossible.
Good.
Larger banks like J.P. Morgan Chase and TD Ameritrade are typically more open to considering non-residents for corporate accounts.
So if you're in the business world, it might be worth starting with those bigger institutions.
It could be, yeah.
But what about smaller businesses or startups?
Right.
Are there options for them?
There are.
Okay.
And this is where the fintech world is really stepping up.
Right.
Companies like Wise Business, Airwallex, and Payoneer are making it easier for non-residents to open corporate accounts,
Okay.
even without a physical U.S. presence.
Got it.
They're really changing the game and making it easier for everyone to access these services.
It's incredible how fintech is revolutionizing the financial landscape,
It is.
making it more accessible and inclusive.
For sure.
But what about online banking?
Yeah.
Is that a realistic option for non-residents? Or are you still stuck with having to go into a physical branch?
Unfortunately, a lot of traditional banks still haven't fully embraced the digital age when it comes to non-resident accounts.
Interesting.
They often require in-person applications,
Really?
which can be a major obstacle
Right.
for people living abroad or those without a convenient branch location.
That's frustrating.
It is.
It seems like online banking should be the perfect solution,
It should be.
especially in today's world where everything is moving online.
Exactly.
But are there any workarounds?
There are.
Yeah.
International and multi-currency accounts often have online access from the get-go
All right.
and allow you to manage funds in different currencies.
Got it.
These can be a lifesaver,
Yeah.
especially for international businesses or those who frequently travel between countries.
So there are ways to bypass those traditional hurdles,
There are.
even if it means thinking outside the conventional banking box.
Exactly.
And while we're on the topic of international transactions, how about sending money overseas as a non-citizen?
Right.
Is that a headache-inducing process?
It can be, yeah.
Yeah.
If you're relying on traditional banks.
Mhm.
But luckily,
Yeah.
services like Ball SS Revolution are streamlining that process,
Okay.
offering a more convenient and often more affordable alternative than
Right.
traditional banks.
That's good to know.
It's amazing how much the financial landscape is changing, right? It used to be that you were pretty much stuck with whatever your local bank offered.
Yeah.
But now there's a whole world of options out there
Right.
designed specifically for people like you who are navigating life across borders.
It really is empowering to see how technology and innovation
It is.
are making things more accessible
Yeah.
and user-friendly.
For sure.
I mean, think about it.
Yeah.
You can open an account,
Uh-huh.
manage your finances,
Yep.
send money international,
Right.
all from your phone.
Exactly. It's putting the power back in the hands of the consumer.
Cool.
And that's something to celebrate.
I agree.
But it's also important to remember that knowledge is key.
Okay.
Just because there are more options out there
Right.
doesn't mean you should just jump into the first thing you see.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah,
It's still crucial to do your research,
for sure.
compare fees and features,
Absolutely.
and read reviews from other users.
Yeah, especially when you're dealing with financial services.
Right.
You want to be sure you're making informed decisions.
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
It's worth spending a little extra time up front
Mm-hmm.
to make sure you're choosing the right service for your needs.
Exactly.
Now, earlier we touched on the challenges of online banking for non-residents.
Right.
It seems like traditional banks are still lagging behind a little bit
They are.
when it comes to fully embracing the digital experience for this segment of customers.
I agree.
It's a bit baffling, isn't it?
It is.
You would think that in today's world,
Mm-hmm.
opening a bank account online would be the default,
It really should be.
especially for people who might not be able to easily visit a physical branch.
Yeah, exactly.
Why do you think there's still so much resistance from traditional banks?
I think part of it is just the inherent conservatism of the banking industry.
Okay.
They're dealing with sensitive financial information,
Right.
and they have to comply with a lot of regulations.
Yeah.
So there's a natural tendency to stick with what they know and what they perceive as being the safest approach.
That makes sense.
Yeah,
But surely there are ways to verify identities
there are.
and comply with regulations without requiring everyone to physically walk into a branch.
Absolutely. And that's where we're starting to see a shift.
Okay.
Fintech companies are proving that it's possible
Yeah.
to create secure and compliant digital onboarding processes.
Right.
And traditional banks are slowly starting to catch on. It's just taking a bit longer than many of us would like.
Well, hopefully they'll speed things up because it's clear that the demand for online banking services is only going to increase,
for sure.
especially for non-residents.
Definitely.
Speaking of demand, I'm curious to get your take on something.
Okay.
We've talked about how the financial landscape is changing,
Right.
becoming more inclusive and accessible.
Yeah.
But what role do you think consumers themselves play in driving that change?
That's a great question.
Mm-hmm.
I think it all comes down to being informed and vocal.
Okay.
Consumers have more power than they realize
Interesting.
when they demand better services,
Mm-hmm.
more transparency,
Uh-huh.
and greater accessibility.
Right.
Companies, listen,
Yeah.
the rise of fintech is a perfect example of that.
Okay.
It was consumer demand for innovation and disruption that fueled that growth.
So it's about using our voices and our choices to support those companies and institutions
It is.
that are aligned with our values and our needs.
Exactly. Every time you choose a bank,
Yeah.
a credit union, or a financial service provider, you're casting a vote.
Interesting.
You're saying, this is the kind of experience I want. This
Mhm.
is the kind of company I support.
Right.
And those choices
Yeah.
collectively have a huge impact on shaping the industry as a whole.
I love that perspective.
Yeah,
It's empowering to know that we, as individuals,
it is.
have the ability to influence these systems
Mm-hmm.
and push for positive change.
Yeah, but even with all this progress,
Right.
it's important to remember that we're still dealing with a complex system, right?
Yeah.
There are still challenges and potential pitfalls to be aware of.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah,
It's not all sunshine and roses.
it's not.
There are still predatory lenders,
Mm-hmm.
hidden fees,
Uh-huh.
and companies that are more interested in profits than people.
Unfortunately, yeah.
That's why it's so important to be informed,
Absolutely.
to do your research,
For sure.
and to ask questions.
It is.
Don't be afraid to challenge the status quo
Right.
or to demand better from the institutions that are supposed to serve you.
I agree. That's such valuable advice.
Yeah.
It's easy to get caught up in the excitement of new technologies and
Yeah.
innovative services,
Mm-hmm.
but it's crucial to maintain a critical eye
Right.
and to advocate for yourself.
So let's shift gears a bit
Okay.
and talk about something we haven't touched on yet,
Right.
sending money overseas.
Right.
This can be a real pain point,
It can.
especially for non-citizens who might be sending money back home to family
Yeah.
or dealing with international transactions.
For sure. You're telling me?
Yeah.
I remember when I first moved abroad, trying to figure out how to send money back home
Yeah.
felt like navigating a minefield of fees,
Right?
exchange rates, and confusing processes.
Totally.
It was a nightmare.
I can only imagine.
Yeah.
It seems like traditional banks aren't always the most helpful
They're not.
or affordable option
Right.
when it comes to international transfers. What are some alternatives that people should be aware of?
Thankfully, there's been a huge surge in companies offering international money transfer services
Yeah.
that are specifically designed to be more user-friendly,
Mm-hmm.
transparent,
Right.
and often significantly cheaper than traditional banks.
Got it.
Companies like Wise, Remitly, and WorldRemit are great examples.
So they're cutting out the middleman
They are.
and making it easier and more affordable to send money across borders.
Yeah, but what about security?
Right.
Are these services as safe as using a traditional bank?
That's a valid concern,
It is.
and it's important to do your research
Yeah,
and choose reputable companies that prioritize security.
for sure.
Look for things like two-factor authentication, encryption, and regulatory compliance,
Exactly.
just like you would with any financial service provider.
Yeah,
You want to make sure your money's in safe hands.
absolutely.
So it's about finding that balance between convenience, affordability, and security. And luckily, there are more and more options out there that tick all those boxes.
There are.
It's amazing to think about how much the landscape has changed in just a few years.
It really is.
It used to be that sending money internationally was a slow, expensive, and often stressful ordeal.
It was.
But now with the rise of these specialized services,
Right.
it's becoming almost as easy as sending a text message.
It really is.
And that's a testament to the power of technology and innovation to break down barriers
It is.
and create a more interconnected world.
It is.
But it's also a reminder that we as consumers
Yeah,
have a responsibility to stay informed,
for sure.
to advocate for our needs, and to make choices that support the kind of financial system we want to see in the world.
I agree. It really does feel like we're on the cusp of a major transformation in the financial world, right?
Right.
It's exciting to see how these new technologies and services
From Dig.
are empowering individuals and businesses to operate more freely and seamlessly across borders.
Absolutely. So as we wrap up our deep dive today,
Okay.
I want to bring it back to our listeners who are considering opening a U.S. bank account.
Sure.
What's one key piece of advice
Yeah.
you would give them based on everything we've discussed?
I'd say don't be intimidated by the process.
Okay.
It might seem daunting at first,
Yeah.
but with a little research and preparation, it's completely manageable.
Right.
And remember,
Yeah.
you don't have to go it alone.
Okay.
There are resources available to help you every step of the way,
Right.
whether it's a financial advisor, a trusted friend,
Yeah.
or one of the many online guides and communities
Right.
dedicated to helping non-citizens navigate U.S. banking.
That's great advice.
Yeah,
It's all about taking that first step
it is.
and knowing that you have support available if you need it.
Right.
Now, before we sign off,
Okay.
I want to leave our listeners with a final thought to ponder.
All right.
We've talked a lot about the practicalities of opening a U.S. bank account, but what about the bigger picture?
Okay.
What does it mean symbolically for someone to gain access to the U.S. financial system?
That's an interesting question.
Yeah.
I think it can be a powerful symbol of inclusion,
Go.
of belonging, of being part of the American dream. Even if you're not a citizen,
Yeah.
it opens doors to opportunities,
Totally.
to stability, and to a sense of financial security that might not have been accessible otherwise.
It's like a key that unlocks a whole new world of possibilities.
Exactly. And it's a reminder that financial inclusion is about more than just money. It's about empowerment,
Right.
about opportunity,
Yeah.
and about creating a more equitable and just world for everyone.
Beautifully said.
Thanks.
And on that note, I think it's time for us to surface from this deep dive.
Right.
Thanks for joining us on this journey. And remember, knowledge is power.
It is.
Keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep.
That wraps up another insightful episode of the Deep Dive Credit Podcast, brought to you by Elite Credit Solutions, your go-to resource for affordable credit repair across the United States. We appreciate you joining us today, and we hope you found the information valuable and empowering. If you're ready to take control of your financial future, don't hesitate to reach out to us at 813-317-6776. Additionally, don't forget to like today's podcast, follow us, or subscribe to stay in tune with future updates. Thank you for listening, and until next time, keep striving for excellence in your credit journey.